Key Bridge collapse.
Key Bridge collapse.
Breaking news. There has been a bridge collapse at Baltimore, Maryland, and fire officials say people fell into the water.
The recent collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore is a real tragedy that resulted in 6 construction workers tragically losing their lives. The bridge's wreckage now hinders access to the port of Baltimore, as it obstructs the channel that links the Baltimore Harbor and the Chesapeake Bay. In today's video, we will take a look at the far-reaching effects of this horrific incident, starting with the economic fallout, followed by the extensive recovery efforts. Make sure to like and subscribe to never miss out on interesting and factual content. On March 26, 2024, the enormous freight ship container MV Dolly sailed from the port of Baltimore towards Colombo, Sri Lanka. Because of Middle East hostilities, this voyage, which usually takes 26 days, had a crew of 21 and 2 seasoned harbor pilots to help with navigation. More than 4,700 shipment containers were transported by the ship, 56 of which included dangerous goods, such as lithium batteries and combustible materials. However, things suddenly took a turn for the worse. According to the radio recordings provided by Maryland Transportation Authority, disaster struck when the Dolly lost power while traveling through the channel outside the port and headed straight for the bridge. Despite losing power, Dolly was able to send out warning signals to authorities. However, despite the police sending out teams to attempt to clear the bridge right away, there was not enough time for all the workers to get out before the bridge collapsed. Consequently, at 1:29 a.m., the Dolly and the Francis Scott Key Bridge collided head-on. This resulted in the 366-meter bridge, which had been in place for almost 50 years, to collapse into the Patapsco River because of the impact, sending trembles throughout the sleeping city of Baltimore. The National Transportation Safety Board published spectacular drone footage of the bridge fall. As the container ship strikes one of the bridge columns, the enormous structure can be seen collapsing in the cliff. First responders from Baltimore City, Hartford County, and the U.S. Coast Guard promptly coordinated rescue attempts. Following this tragic event, Baltimore declared a state of emergency, and a large search and rescue effort was launched to locate the 8 construction workers who were on the bridge at the time. Even though the last-minute warning probably saved many lives by alerting authorities to divert traffic away from the bridge, rescue personnel searched in vain for at least 6 members of the construction team for the entirety of the day. 8 teams of 50 divers searched the icy, low-visibility waters following the collapse of the bridge in an attempt to find and recover the 8 construction workers who had been working on the bridge at the time of the tragedy. Sadly, 3 employees were discovered dead and 3 others are still unaccounted for and thought to be deceased. Residents in the vicinity have provided eyewitness reports of the terrifying incidents. Harvey Bryce, 73 of Dundalk, said he heard a tremendous noise that kinda trembled the house a little bit. Dundalk resident Amanda Peters, 44, reported hearing a constant, hard to describe it. It was so loud but continued for so long. Glen Burnie resident Camille Sims, 23, who routinely drives the bridge, felt her house tremble after 1 in the morning and was confused by the strange tremor. The government officials were also quick to release statements about the devastating impacts of the collision. And why wouldn't they? I mean, it's no secret that the Francis Scott Bridge in Baltimore was a critical piece of infrastructure for the port. The bridge is also one of the nation's largest shipping hubs, as well as an inevitable means of transportation for commuters in the area. State Senator Johnny Ray Salling, who represents the district including the bridge, expressed concerns about the incisive ramifications resulting from its loss. Undoubtedly, these consequences will not be limited to Baltimore, but will reverberate throughout the entire East Coast, giving the crucial role played by the Port of Baltimore in facilitating transportation, travel, and commerce. According to Mary D. Kane, president and CEO of Maryland Chamber of Commerce, 35,000 people utilize the Francis Scott Key Bridge every day, and the Port of Baltimore creates over 15,000 direct jobs, in addition to indirectly affecting almost 140,000 additional jobs. Given that the Port of Baltimore, which was the leading destination for coal exports and vehicle imports, has been virtually shut down, the bridge's collapse has had a substantial negative economic impact. Among the companies severely impacted by the catastrophe are German automakers like the BMW, Mercedes, and Volkswagen, which significantly depend on the Port of Baltimore for imports. Due to the port's major role in the nation's automobile trade, the supply chain interruption is anticipated to have far-reaching effects. According to authorities, the economy is losing more than $15 million every day as a result of the closure. This is a major disaster and will create significant problems for the U.S. East Coast for U.S. importers and exporters, wrote Lars Jensen, CEO of Vespucci Maritime, on LinkedIn. The bridge collapse will mean that for the time being, it will not be possible to get to the container terminals or a range of other port terminals in Baltimore. Additionally, this means that cargo already gated into the Baltimore terminals would have to either wait an unknown period for the sea lane to reopen or be gated back out and shifted to a different port. It has taken a while and has been risky to remove the debris from the canal since the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers had to map the debris field underwater before specialized barges could start the recovery work. In spite of this, 2 auxiliary channels have already been opened to facilitate the entry and exit of some smaller vessels from Port 1. The catastrophe is the most costly maritime tragedy, with an estimated $2 to $4 billion in total costs. The liability for these costs will be shared among the Dolly owners, Grace Ocean, the management company, Synergy Maritime Group, and the insurance provider, Britannia. However, the total liability of these entities is limited by an obscure 1851 U.S. law, leaving a significant portion of costs to be covered by reinsurance companies and potentially federal emergency funding. Authorities are working to clear the channel and begin the process of rebuilding the bridge, but it is expected to take years before the Port of Baltimore and the surrounding transportation infrastructure are fully restored to normal operations. But this collision has not only affected the economical balance of the community. Beyond the economical implications lies the gut-wrenching truth that lives were lost as a result of this tragedy. Thus, it is imperative that we remember the emotional toll that this situation has had on this community. There are no doubt that the loss of 6 construction workers' lives is a catastrophe that their families, friends, and colleagues will feel deeply. Though the first responders deserve a great deal of respect for their heroic efforts in securing the situation and helping the victims, I think we can all agree that the pain of the incident will never truly go away. It is obvious that this tragedy has brought up significant issues regarding the safety and upkeep of vital infrastructure, but was this tragedy orchestrated? Or was it just an accident? Well, don't worry folks, because the National Transportation Safety Board is leading a comprehensive investigation into the incident. As the investigation into the reason for the bridge's collapse proceeds, early results show that the lower limb of the bridge's structure sustained a cleavage fracture that was unable to survive the impact of the cargo ship Dolly, resulting in the collapse. So I think it's safe to say that this was not an act of terrorism. However, it is important to remember, guys, that all it is just conjecture at this point. The NTSB's extensive investigation to find out any systematic issues with the ship will all come down to how meticulously they review the drone footage and other data, which will include speaking with the ship's crew and analyzing the voyage data recorded. But fear not, viewers, as this vital investigation to the ship's electrical system will undoubtedly yield some results. Let's just hope that these findings will then pave the way for reforms and future policies that will enable us to prevent similar disasters in the future. This tragedy has brought along with it lessons that, if learned, can be employed to improve the security and dependability of our vital transportation systems, strengthen emergency response procedures, and promote stronger cooperation between stakeholders in order to minimize the impact of such devastating incidents. However, one thing is certain: the journey ahead won't be easy. The recovery efforts alone are so complex, not to mention the mammoth task of rebuilding the entire bridge. However, with ample funding and cooperation from the public, state, and federal governments, as well as the corporate sector, the Francis Scott Key Bridge ought to be operational very soon. Thank you guys for watching, and let us know in the comments if you enjoyed this video.